Hey there y'all, it's AFATESOTWISTED here. Today we're going to be working on this cute little toddler dress, and I'm going to be using this 1982 retro pattern. If you don't have this exact pattern, you can get one similar and follow along. I'm doing view A or B, so here we go. So the first thing, I've got my pattern here, and I'm going to pull the pieces out for the one that I'm going to be doing, and I'm going to be using this retro daisy pattern. It's just absolutely adorable and perfect for this. So for this one, I've got one piece cut on the fold of the front of the bottom of the dress, two pieces for the bottom back part of the dress, and then we have four pieces of the back bodice piece, and then we have two pieces for the front bodice piece that are cut on the fold. And once we've got all of these pieces, we're going to start putting it together. And I have this little snap here that's going to be on the back as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold over that back middle part of the bodice, and it's easier for me than turning it in when I have everything sewn together, but you can do it that way. It's not a big deal, whichever way you want to do it. I choose to do it this way. And I'm going to do all four pieces about a 1/2 inch fold, a little less than a 1/2 inch. So now we're going to put the bodice together, and what I'm going to do is take one piece of the front and then one piece of the back, and I'm going to match those shoulder pieces up. And I'm going to stitch along the top shoulder piece. I'm going to do that for both sides and for the back and the front of the dress. And you may notice here that my pieces really didn't match up along the sides there. That's no big deal. I'm not sure why it's like that. That pattern has always been that way. It's not my cut, it's actually the pattern pieces. This pattern was handed down to me from my mom. She made children's clothes with it when I was a kid, probably for my cousins and other family members, because I would have been too old for this one at the time. But it's absolutely adorable and very versatile. You can actually, over the years, I've made this for Twisty from the time she was 7 until she was about 9 or 10 years old, and I just would extend the bodice pieces, and I'll do that in a later video. I'll show you how I work with this pattern and how you can make it where it will fit a toddler or a young girl. So there you go. This is what the pieces are going to look like whenever you have everything sewn together correctly. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press those seams open on both pieces that I've put together. Okay, so now I'm going to lay these out with right sides matching together, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew along those sides and the inside, but I'm going to leave the bottom open on each piece, and that side piece that I folded over, it'll actually need to be stitched, but I'll get to that later. And you just want to be really careful with this part, and what I'm doing here, it's a little hard to see my needle, but I'm stopping at each corner and I'm pushing the needle down with the hand wheel on my machine and turning it so that the corners are perfect on this. Alright, so what I'm doing here is at each of those corners, I'm just clipping right at the seam. You don't want to clip your seam open, but you want to make sure you clip those or it's not going to turn right, it's not going to look good. And around the curved edge, you'll see there I just clipped a little bit, and I did the same thing. Don't clip your seam open. So now we're going to turn it right side out, and we're going to start putting this cute little dress together. Okay, so I'm going to set that bodice aside, and I'm going to get the underarm parts of the dress pieces folded over, pressed, and then we'll sew them together. And I do a double fold because I don't have a serger, and I don't want those raw edges there. It just looks so much better when you double fold it. If you have a serger, you can serge and fold once. It's just up to you how you want to do it. So I'm doing that with all 4 of the underarm parts, and you'll see me stitch that together, and then I'll be back to explain the rest. I have sewn this dress together so many times over the years that it's like an old habit for me. It's just so easy to do, and I think I've gotten so much better at it. Absolutely, if you are a beginning sewer, I recommend this pattern or one similar to it, because it really is just so easy and versatile, and it gets you really comfortable with your sewing machine, and just small elements like doing these fold overs and the snap that you're going to put on the back of it, and doing that bodice and doing gathers. There's a lot of elements to this little dress that make it fun to do, and if you have a little one that you can make this for, I promise you'll be making tons of them, because my little Twisty had one for every day of the week and every week of the month. So there we go. That is our underarms all done up. Okay, so now with right sides facing together, we are going to put this back part of the dress piece together. And what you'll see me do here is, once I have that lined up, I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to mark where I want to stop my stitching, so that the part of the back, the bottom part, is open to make it easier to put on. So I'm just going to sew all the way down using about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you are curious, my sewing machine is a Viking Husqvarna numero uno. I don't know why I say numero, but it's a Viking Husqvarna number 1. It was gifted to me by a lovely subscriber named Margie. Margie is my absolute hero. I've had this machine for about 6 years, and I absolutely love it. It just has endured so much. Okay, so now I'm going to press that back seam open, and the top part where I left that little split, I'm going to fold over once about 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to do it again about 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to stitch that so that it's nice and pretty and neat looking when the dress is put together. Now, I know that some people will say, well, I don't do it this way. Here's the way you do it. But here's the thing about that. When you're self-taught with sewing, you learn a lot of different ways to do things. And if it works for you and it keeps your garment together and it still looks good, there's no right or wrong way to do this. Teach yourself the best way, the most comfortable way for you to do things. I am self-taught, and a lot of the things that I do are probably a little different than other people do them, but I didn't have a mentor or a teacher, so I had to learn on my own. Be comfortable with that. Be okay with that. If it works for you, it works. Alrighty, I just wanted to take a quick break here and introduce you to my Etsy shop. If you are interested in the things that I make, I also sell things that I make, so be sure to check it out. The products may change and the look of my shop may change, but it'll always be a fate so twisted. Alrighty, so now that we've got those two back pieces sewn together with right sides facing together, we are going to sew the back and the front of the bottom part of the dress together. And be sure, don't sew those underarm pieces together. You're going to start right underneath them there and do about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Alrighty, I took my pinking shears and I cut down the sides of those seams. Don't cut into your seams, just get a little close. The pinking shears help keep it from fraying so bad. And now we're going to do some gathering. This is a lot of fun. Make sure you have your gathering foot on, right? The first time I did a video of my gathering foot, I had it on upside down. It worked, but it looked ridiculous. So when you use the gathering foot, you want to turn your attention to a looser setting, pretty loose. Don't go all the way to 0, but about 2, 1 or 2 will do. And you want to turn the stitch length all the way up to the longest or widest stitch length. And give it a good tail. You don't need a tail like I did here. I got a little carried away. But you want a long tail on that so that you can pull it, or you have extra string also so you don't pull it out. And you just sew this along and give it a little push towards the back of the machine as you do that, and it will gather it up. Your gather isn't going to fit perfect. There's no way to do this perfectly. It's just going to gather it for you so that you don't have to do as much work with it. So I'm going to do that all the way around the top edge of the dress, and I'm doing it about 1 inch from the top, the raw edge of the pieces. Okay, so now we're gonna start attaching the bodice to the bottom of the dress. And what I'm doing is, with right sides facing together, I'm going to pin the ends of one side of that bodice. You see it's already sewn together, but we're not going to do both pieces. You're going to open it up and do that one side. And I pin the end pieces first so that that matches up, and then we just start working with that gather until it fits and it looks the way we want it to look. And if you want more of a gather, you can actually use more fabric, and you'll have a fuller gather. This one wasn't as full as I would like for it to be, and I think the fuller the gather, the cuter the dress, but that's just me. So I'm going to pin, and once I've got everything fitted, I'm going to take it to the machine where I have already taken that gathering foot off and reattached my other gathering foot, and make sure you redo your tension and your stitch length and go for it. And just very carefully, and that first seam that you did with the gather is probably going to show through, but what I did after I have all of this put together is I went in with my seam ripper and picked it out. It got a little hard to just pull out, which most of the time you should be able to just do. If you pull that bobbin string, the thread will come right loose. But if not, you can, once everything's done, you can just pick it out with your seam ripper. So there is the front part of the bodice, and now I'm going to do each back piece. And I had forgotten to sew that side, so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to connect that, and you can do that at any point once you're ready to do this part. You don't have to wait till this step to do it, but I just forgot, so now I'm doing it. And then I will get right back to putting that together and getting it ready just like I did the front part, matching up the ends and then fixing that gather till it fits, and then I'll sew it on there. You'll notice that as I begin or finish a seam, I will do a back stitch. I absolutely recommend doing that at every stitch, except when you do the gather. Don't back stitch your gather or you'll never get that thing pulled out. But you want to do that back stitch because it helps to keep everything put together well, and you don't want it coming loose. If you don't back stitch anything and then you wash the little outfit like this, the first time you wash it, it's going to come to pieces. So anyway, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that inside of the bodice pieces and I'm going to do a fold over and press, and I'm going to kind of cover that gathered piece up, and then I'm going to match it up with you'll see me put pins in it once I get this part done, and I'm just kind of feeling my way through that part when I turn the dress right side out. It's a little tricky at this part, but that's the fun of it. Challenge yourself and learn to do something new. And you'll see that what I'm doing with these pins is I have them where the sharp part of the pin will be facing the back of my machine as I sew. I'm not going to sew over them. I'm going to get to them and I'm going to pull them out as I go, and it just helps to keep everything in place. This is a step where you want to take your time. You don't want to go too fast. You don't want to get in a hurry. It's worth taking the time. And I'm sorry that I'm a little out of range here. It was a little tricky having my little tripod on the table, and I kept pushing it out of the way with my elbow, so I moved it back and I got a little out of camera range. So anyway, this is what I'm doing here. You see, I'm really taking my time and making sure that that back fold that I just pressed is lined up and I'm not missing anything. The front looks fantastic. The outside looks fantastic. Probably when you turn it inside out, it looks a little wonky from the fold over, but that's not a huge deal. And you get better at it as the years go by, so, don't be shy. Just keep trying. Keep going. It's the only way you learn. So learning to sew definitely was a huge challenge for me, but when I had my youngest child, I just wanted so badly to make clothes for her and, and enjoy every moment of her childhood. I wanted those old family photos to have stories of the outfits I made behind them, and they definitely do. She was a little wild with her colors. I always let her pick the color themes of her outfits that she wanted to wear, and, sometimes she may have looked like she was about to run away with the circus, but she was absolutely adorable in her colorful outfits. So now we are going to do the hem, and what I'm going to do with that, I freehand it because I just always make sure that my cut is nice and clean so that I can do it freehand this way. I do not like to pin the hem. Every time I've tried pinning or pressing, it's messy. When I do it this way, it turns out much better. So I'm doing one fold over of about 1/2 inch, which I really didn't want it to be that thick, but I don't know, it just happened that way. So I'm doing the first fold over and I'm sewing all the way around. Then I'm going to do a second fold over of about 1/2 inch, and I'm going to sew right along the top edge of that. And then what I'll do is you'll see me turn the dress right side out, and I will actually do a seam right along the bottom edge. Just makes it look a lot neater. I don't know. You don't have to do it that way. You can do your hems the way you want if you know a better way. Like I said, I am self-taught and I do things a little bit different sometimes. But different works for me, so if it doesn't work for you, figure out your way. What does best for you when you do things like this? I happen to like this kind of hem. I go nuts trying to learn those blind hems and all that, and I just don't mess with them. So There you go. So now I'm going to do that bottom edge, and it just made it look so much neater when I did it that way. Okay, so now I'm going to sew that snap on, and it's just a pretty simple, thing. I don't go through the back, I go through that top part and just sew through each loop of that snap. And I do the same thing with the second snap. I just line them up and then I put it on there. And you want to make sure that one snap's on the front piece and one snap's on the back piece or the inside of the bodice. If you don't, you can't snap them, or you'll have to twist it around, snap it, if you get what I mean. So there it is. Oh snap, it worked. So that is it. It is all put together. Let's see how pretty she turned out. Alrighty, so there's the finished dress from the McCalls pattern number 7850, copyright 1982. If you gals want to try that, I hope you can find the pattern online or one similar to it. It is really cute and versatile. And like I say, I will be working on a video which will be on my Facebook page showing how I've used this pattern over the years, how I make it into a bigger size, and how I've kept it all this time. So hope y'all enjoyed. Peace. Bye-bye.